You doing?
I'm good, Chris. I don't know what happened, man. The phone didn't ring at all.
Oh, I didn't know. Well, that's just guy creeping up on you. That's all. Uh,
Yeah, I like
uh,
that.
all right, here we go. This is Brothaspeak Podcast, where we interview the innovative, the daring, and the bold, providing informative topics for the Black LGBT. And I have a guest today, like I always do. I'm never going to come on this show not having a guest, but I'm going to have the guest that I have is Mr. John Collins, who actually recently wrote a book. And, don't get surprised if you're driving, but the book is called God Ain't Call Me Fag. Now, when I first got the text, from a previous guest who was actually on the show, I thought, maybe he wrote it wrong, he texted it wrong or something like that. But no, that's not the case. so I had to bring him on the show to find out a little bit more pertaining to the book, what it is that he's actually conveying, because I read a little bit about the book and it seems to be kind of a spiritual book. Am I wrong in thinking this, John? What would you say the book is considered to be?
It's everything. It does encompass a level of spirituality, a level of heightened spirituality. So, yes, you can look at it that way as well.
Okay. So, well, what inspired you to make the book? Well, first off, let's go with the title. God Ain't Called Me Fag. Let's start there. What made you give that title?
Yeah, so I really, in all of my work, I try to, hit you hard. I wanted to grab your attention. That's how you pull a reader in. So, with this title, all the conversations, all the prayers, all the things that I've talked to God about in my life. I grew up in the church, so I know God from, since I was knee high to a grasshopper, but versus conversations that I've had with everyone else concerning my sexuality, God never had an issue with it. He never said anything to me derogatory about the John Collins that is gay, that likes men, that, it was nothing. I've never had any condemnation from, God. It was always from people. Therefore, I thought that was from God. So that's pretty much where that title came from.
Gotcha. That was okay. All right, I get it now. I'm glad you explained that.
Yeah.
So, well, let me ask you this: how long you been writing? First off.
I've been writing since I was 15. Professionally, doing this for 10 years. So I actually released my first book in 2013. So but
Okay.
I've been writing professionally for about 10 years now.
Oh wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, any work that anyone could possibly recognize from previous?
Right now, just I have 3 other books: Virgin to the Life, Sounds of Burned Silence, and Poetic Violence. Those are part of a series.
Okay.
I co-wrote a play a couple years ago here in Atlanta called The Ding-a-Long.
All right.
So that was a play that we put out here in Atlanta. I've been featured in a few publications. I've got a HuffPost article out there. So I'm slowly, getting my name in the fold of things.
Okay. So we catching you at the early start. All right, I can deal with that.
Yeah, the E-Lin yet. I haven't hit that status yet, but I'm working. That's what I'm working towards. But it's really about the craft.
So 10 years in this craft game, how do you feel, pertaining to 10 years in it so far?
More confident in, my abilities. I'm more confident in actually the content that I'm putting out now. So I was really scared to release this book. My other work to me is kind of on a surface level, in my opinion, compared to what I really put into this book. It's very personal. I'm specifically dealing with aspects of my life and putting a journalistic free verse type of flow to it. So it's not necessarily that I'm telling you a story, but it's not me preaching anything. It's not me talking against anyone. It's just, this is what I've dealt with, in my walk with God.
Gotcha.
What I've talked to him about through my life experiences. And I feel, it's important to share these stories because other brothers coming behind me, they need to know, when they get kicked out of the house or if their parents find out, who out there has, what have you gone through to get through what you've been through?
Right.
We need to pass on that knowledge. So
You know,
that's the big
that's a good idea to do it because we've kind of lost the gay mamas and gay papas a lot.
yes, sir.
I'm dead serious. I think a lot of people. I
Mhm.
think the transgender has it more than the rest of the community.
Yes,
I think
yes.
I've seen that a lot more. So getting to the book now. So basically, what type of things do you tackle in this book?
I tackle my relationship with God. One, having sex with men. I talk about the issues that I had with my mom. We're still growing. I talked about how me and my dad, when he found out, you know that I was gay, what that conversation looked like, what we went through back and forth from a biblical standpoint, what that looked like, and how now my dad he can openly say gay.
Okay.
He asked, I can. He's given me that option to bring someone home if I'm serious about that person. We've had these conversations now, and these are things that 10 years ago I wouldn't have been able to do. I also go into a little bit of detail about some sexual trauma that I've dealt with in the military. I talk about friendships, the things that we go through with that, and just really, self-awareness and self-love.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Well, then, because I see the theme that I've read so far is freedom. Freedom.
yes,
That seems to
yes.
be the theme that seems to come out a little bit more often. And why is freedom? Freedom from what?
Freedom from what, society says that we are, the limited thing that they say we can be, the limitations that they place on even our spirituality. It's like there's an agenda to take God away from us. Like we don't deserve to be who He created us to be in all that beauty, the same way as anyone else. So I wanted to give something that offered, a safe space to vent and someone else, other people, readers to kind of relate to, maybe they're going through that same thing. So just unlock those mental chains that, society places on us, the things that we even place on ourselves. That, because I know there are brothers still out there who are younger than me that don't have that representation in the towns or cities that they live in. Representation, I think, is important. There are brothers that are younger than me. I've heard their stories and actually, spoken to them that they don't feel like they're represented, in the media because they feel in their own minds that gay looks a certain way. You have to be a certain way. And if you don't fit that mold, body-wise, image-wise, clothes-wise, you are even an outsider in your own community. The freedom that I speak to just allows you to getting over your past, getting over that hurt, because you keep living in it, you keep reopening that wound and not, move forward to really go internal and see what it is that God has placed in you and what He's really speaking to you about, vice what everyone is telling you, coming against that in their own, perspective. That's where the focus of freedom is.
You know what I'm beginning to notice is the fact that we always look for almost like recognized by the mainstream media and or just family or people in general. And
Yeah.
the funny part about it is that which I'm going to touch on religion. I'm going to touch on this now. You got to go there now. And the funny part about it is though everything started small. At least in my little general thoughts here, everything started in a way that everybody, because remember, let's go back to the older days. Elvis Presley, and even though he is not a black man, but Elvis Presley was considered to be sinful. And he was gyrating his hips and all that. Oh my Lord Jesus, hallelujah! But the thing about it is, that became what people begin to want and desire and want more of. Remember, let's go back even further. Black music in general. White kids were going to get damn near kicked out the house if they didn't put those albums underneath the pillow, underneath the bed, because of the fact that they did not want their parents to find out. And when it comes to gay was always something that people bashed. Not the fact that gay people was going after other people, but gay people was just the fact that it was an easy target. And that was the main thing. Now, You got all sorts of programs. You got to have a gay character. If you don't have a gay character, something wrong with the show. And
Right.
so I think right now, and maybe I'm missing it. Aren't we already now getting to the point where people are recognizing us? And Matt, I'm not going to say not pigeonhole. I'm not saying not pigeonhole, but the fact
Mm-hmm.
of recognition is already there.
The recognition is there. I think there are more people that are, pushing the boundary, the envelope to get us in the forefront, to, make us visible, to stop what we have went through, the older generations have gone through to get to where we are now. The suicides and, the kids being misunderstood and getting kicked out and, all that. So yeah, it does need to be pushed in the forefront. I think we're just getting braver, and even some of this younger generation who don't want to be classified by any means. They don't like labels. They don't want to be called gay or what have you, or be identified by gender. They're pushing those boundaries, so it's making us think more. Okay, what's the bigger picture in terms of who we are as a whole in terms of humanity? We want to stop typecasting each other.
You're right. The labels are now being questioned a lot more, especially from the youth. When you go to the schools and you have a particular LGBT sort of club, a lot of them, even though they're bringing their purses to class, they don't want that label and they will not attend. And so part of me says, well, man, does it force the adults? I get it, but it also still places is when the resources are there, you just don't want to be labeled. So I do question that too, to the point of, especially when it comes to our community. If you receive a label, that label will be on you for the rest of your life.
Forever.
And that particular label for instance, we put medical and health clinics in the black neighborhood, but if that particular clinic is labeled as the HIV clinic, or it's automatically surrounded in the community. Oh, you got that stuff. And so just by going, and just that in itself kills resources, kills of things that guidance, kills the opportunity for us to be that better person because we come across that label. That label is so powerful, but also so deadly.
Right, because it's like you're not allowed to change your mind later or evolve later on in life.
Right.
So yeah.
So I'm a little bit fearful of sometimes the youth, because I think in the process of those, you're able to find God and understand God of the universe, or how she or he is regardless. Do you not agree with that or no?
I agree with you, because God is spirit. Therefore, God is, all things. So you can't just pigeonhole God. There are so many species of trees. There are so many species of insects, things of that nature. So why can't, the picture of humanity look just as diverse with gay, straight, cisgender, however you want to label yourself? We're bringing something to the table. So what can we learn from each other through our life experience?
Right. So I'm going to go down to some of the subjects you talked about. You talked about friends. You talked about sex. I'm going to definitely go down that a little bit. But let me just go back to what I said in terms of religion real quick, because it's so funny that I had a conversation just yesterday about certain philosophers who, especially German philosophers in particular, who basically said religion has had its time, and religion, and this is going back like 1700s, 1800s, and around that particular time. And these particular philosophers says religion is now should be put away. It has had its time and is over. But yet, in 2018, religion still is a struggle for people to shed their minds on. And that pretty much shaped the way people have thought, parents, generations, for years. In terms of gay people, in terms of people who have children out of wedlock, in terms of divorced people, in terms of all that stuff. My biggest question is this: do you believe religion should be one of those things that also be put to rest?
I don't agree with that statement. I can understand where that statement comes from, but that's it's not something that I necessarily agree with. I think religion is an important tool. It's a tool that, can be utilized to get to an understanding of God, or let me take that back, to get to your own understanding of God. So to completely get rid of it, I think, I don't know if that would be a detriment to society, but the way that we use it can be, can evolve or should evolve and needs to change. And I see a lot of churches doing that. We saw that, maybe 10, 15 years ago when Christianity started saying they started making these non-denominational churches.
Yeah. Yes.
So there's an evolution that takes place in religion if the people are open enough to follow that flow of that new, what the church says, God is always doing a new thing. If you're open-minded enough to go with that flow and see what it is that God is trying to show you now in this generation, then I think it's still a vital tool that, kind of needed. So to just get rid of it, I don't think that we should completely get rid of it. It should be, another option. If you choose to partake of it, then do that. If not, then, find your own way.
In other words, replace it with something else if that is
Right.
an option to get rid of it. And which is
Exactly.
true. Psychology says that, you cannot, you should not try to force somebody to get rid of something, because psychologically they're not going to let it go. You got to replace it with something else. I do believe that. I still say let's go to our African roots, but whatever. All right, so
which is where Christianity stems from, which all religions basically,
Yeah. Oh no. Listen. I definitely see the history. I've seen that history, and I definitely understand it a lot better than I think the average. But I don't think that people would actually agree with that, because going back in history, it may open up a can of worms. But anyway, so there's a couple of topics you touched on, and you touched on family, you touched on friends, you touched on relationships, etc., intimate relationships. Starting with friends, when it comes to addressing it within this book, how is that addressed when it comes to how you discovered yourself, or how friends became either friends or good or bad for you? What was that process for you?
So the group of friends, I started out, I guess, with 7. It was 7 of us as a collective whole. We've been friends maybe going on 18 years now, I guess. I've known these guys since 2000. I just talk about how not everyone is your friend. How you need to really, if you are a spiritual person, you need to, seek discernment when you allow people into your space, when you are, and who you call friend. Because not everybody in the gay life is your friend.
Of course.
Not everybody is there. Not everybody has your back, and that's within the circle, subculture, not just the gay community, but specifically speaking to us. Not everybody is a friend. Not everybody has your best interests at heart. So I touch a little bit on that. It's nothing major, but I do talk about how important friendships are, how important loyalty is. When you establish these friendships. Because a lot of times these people become your family when you have no one else to go to, during the holidays, or, when, you get that news that, the family member that kicked you out of the house, is dead. And how do you deal with that? I think there's a portion in here where I talk about an encounter that I had with one of my closest friends who, he's HIV positive, and he kind of withdrew from us for maybe a week or two. And, I was checking on him, just really concerned. And it was one, we talk to each other every day. Even to this day, we talk to one another every day. I just remember it was a weekend that we were supposed to get together. He's a stickler for time. He didn't show up to my crib. And so I'm calling him, it's going straight to voicemail. And I'm concerned at this point, like, what's going on? Go to his crib, his doors open, it's, not locked. He's just on the couch, just laid out. I walk in and he barely looks at me. The TV's on mute. It's a fan just directly on him, blowing on high. I'm like, bro, what's going on? What's up? And, he tells me, Johnny told me I had to take medication. And he had been at that point, he had been positive, I think, maybe 3 or 4 years, and didn't need any supplement or medication or anything of that nature. But when they told him that he needed to take, these HIV meds, that's when it became a reality for him.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he felt that's when his clock started. And that's many of our stories, you know what I mean? So,
gotcha.
He's good, he's good now, but that was one of those moments where you really need to have an understanding of what friendship and loyalty to someone looks like. That changed the dynamic of our friendship.
Right.
Right. So, those are the type of stories that I address in the book concerning friends.
And, and you're right, because especially when it comes to community, a lot of things that, let's keep it real. Some things you just cannot talk to your family about. You can't talk to your mom about everything. You can't talk to your daddy about it. You can't talk to your brother about everything. So usually friends are that outlet that everybody needs, regardless of what. Now, when it comes to family, and addressing, because the freedom aspect I can definitely see in friends is the fact that you're able to be exactly who you are, because that part of you is understandable and recognized. Family, though, how is that dynamic in terms of finding that freedom with family?
Oh, wow. That was something that I had to actually just take. My mom, this book, okay, so let me give you a little background on why I wrote this book. So when I was 16, 17, that's when I started writing. Right. And I kept this little journal. And, I was writing about, a lot of the stuff was similar to this book. This book is written in a journalistic type of profile. So, I was writing about, things that any gay boy would. Crushes, things going on in school, I wonder what it's like to kiss a dude, all these different things. My mama found that journal. And, she confronted me about it. I ended up burning that journal. And so this book is a callback to, what would I tell that 17-year-old boy based off my life experiences now.
Gotcha.
So from that time forward, I guess that's 20 years, within the 20 years, what I've gone through with my mom, my dad, and even aunts, uncles, and cousins, just in terms of my gayness, it slowly started not to be a big deal. When they saw that I wasn't a threat to their children, to my nieces and nephews, it became a less of a thing to focus on in terms of there's John, the gay one. That's the gay grandchild. It just, I don't know, all this, a lot of the things that I felt that I would bring up in conversation with my dad in terms of what did you think of me being gay? What if I brought somebody home? Why did you feel the way that you do towards me being gay? It was like one day he just called me up on the phone and we just started having a conversation. I didn't have to bring anything to him. So that's how me and my dad just started our relationship back at square one, just reintroducing ourselves to one another and going from there. Now, my mom is something that we don't talk about.
Gotcha.
We are just getting to a place now where, we're redeveloping our relationship, and our conversations have gone from 3-minute high and bys to now we're on the phone for 45 minutes to an hour at a time some days, and I'm looking at the phone like, God, is this me and my mama talking? So with my mom, her issues with the sexuality was, she's a nurse. So when we were in Detroit, she started nursing in the 80s when the AIDS epidemic happened.
Gotcha.
So she saw a lot of that. So that's her beef with me being gay. I don't think it has anything to do, with how she thinks God feels about me. She feels that ultimately all of us, I think somewhere in the back of her mind, ultimately all of us may end up with, HIV, and that's, is it punishment or is it that's just what it is? So think she's still kind of stuck in that mind frame of it.
Gotcha.
But we don't talk about it.
Gotcha.
Maybe
Gotcha.
one day we will, but hey, that's
Okay. So now when it comes to, so we got family, we got friends.
yeah.
So when it comes to relationships and
Yeah.
when it comes to that aspect, so what exactly it is that you feel that relationships also kind of add to that element of finding freedom or gaining freedom, etc.?
And I think, you know, relationships, we're all looking to bring that perfect dude home to make our family see that gay is okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's why a lot of us may or may not serial date. You know, I don't want to generalize, but so.
I love it. You said it. May or may not serial that. Got it. It's a nice, pleasant word. Totally get it.
Yeah, right. We want to bring that perfect person home. And a lot of times we have these unrealistic ideas of what that looks like because it fits this heteronormative picture by what really fits our life, you know, who would really fit into our lives. So relationships, I don't really have a whole lot of experience with relationships.
Stop the press. Stop. Wait. What?
What?
Okay. Now let me ask you, why is that?
All right. So I think a lot of it has to do with my travels with the military, moving around a lot. The environment that I was in my military career didn't really warrant me, you know, the opportunity to develop a lasting, meaningful relationship. Like, I've been in relationships, but in terms of my longest relationship was a year and a half. So
okay.
I don't really feel like I'm an expert to talk about, you know, the aspects of a relationship.
No, not necessarily, you know, going into that particular element. You know, this is, you know, we're just basically talking about your experience in terms of
my experience. Yeah. So just really, I had to rethink a lot of, you know, the ideas that I had about the type of guy that I wanted to be with, the type of guy that I wanted to be, you know, versus in terms of sexual roles, in terms of that other person's spirituality versus mine. You know, the whole saying, being equally yoked. I don't necessarily, you know, believe in that type of thing anymore.
No. No, let's be real. I mean, I just think that a lot of people, and this is, by the way, you know, this also goes by, I think, every human being on this earth. Girls growing up, they have an idea of how their man gonna be. And
I do too.
Yeah, exactly. And what was your idea? I'm curious before you go further. What was your idea?
My idea, oh my God. So, okay.
Why not?
I'm going to be completely transparent. Right,
go
so
ahead.
The dude from, okay, remember Janet Jackson's song, Again?
Oh.
The dude that she had in that video.
Yes. Okay.
What's his name?
He is an actor. Yeah, he's a popular actor.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he was my ideal. Like, when I thought about, okay, who I would be with, the epitome of the dude that I would want to take home to Marla, he was it.
Oh my goodness!
I know, right?
You was in that bohemian feeling. You know, when he cried, you cried, and oh Lord Jesus!
Yeah. When he was shot out on what was that? A Different World. Yeah, that was my dude right there. So,
man.
Going from that, what I do, I guess, and now that I guess that they have a better understanding of your question. So yeah, I had this idea of what I wanted. Of course, that evolved. So I do talk about that in the book, but I really talk about the importance of developing a relationship with oneself, and if you are a spiritual person, developing a relationship with God, because that's going to show you all your non-negotiables, and then what you really need to look for in a mate. Once you understand yourself and know yourself, then you'll know what type of partner you need to be aware of.
True.
That people go in and out of your life.
You know, I agree with that, because I do agree that this is what I believe. I think the experiences that you receive in your life bring you to this point. The experiences that you receive all your life are to chisel you into being the person that you really truly want to be. Because in the beginning, you have no idea what your negotiables are. you have no idea what they are. And you have no idea in terms of how to approach family with it. You just have to learn how through the years to develop that level of courage that many of us still have not developed. And
because a lot of us do. We run our boyfriends by our friends, and if they don't approve, then a lot of times we get rid of them.
Yeah, but that is very much true. That's very true. Mm-hmm. And the funny part about it is when you look at their relationships, it's all messed up too. But but we know nobody else to be able to have these conversations with, because you can't freely have it with mom, can't have freely with dad, can't have freely with your brother. Some of us. Very few of us, I think. Correction. I'm gonna correct myself. I think now the community may be getting to the point where it's a little bit more acceptable. Okay, the reason why I'm saying that is because within the white community, it's acceptable. It's just the way it is. A little more free. Black community, we're a little more conservative, and it's creepy crawly. It's very much a creepy crawly issue. It's going to take a couple of 10 more years to say, well, I know he gay and all, which I believe, in my personal opinion, that's why the millennials, really, I think they help propel that feeling to be more accepted, because they really can care less about what people think in a lot of ways. So I think they actually
will let you know.
And will let you know about it. So I think that generation is here for a purpose too. And so to get to the level where you are now, to go through all those experiences, where did you and your relationship with God, how did it come? Where did you start seeing that relationship develop better, or under better understanding of each other?
I think when I let go a lot of what, I had to unlearn a lot of the stuff that I learned about God and what he says about me through the word of God. So when I started seeing, I think a lot of that changed when I moved down here to Atlanta and I started attending this affirming church. And I was like, it felt like my church home that I grew up in. I felt the presence of God. I felt myself evolving spiritually. I was learning something. It was the same Bible, but I don't know if it was just the way he was delivering the message, or if that was just, I don't know what it was, but the contradictory portion of that was the fact that he was using the same word of God that had been condemned against me. And so I would study the word for myself, and I just started asking God questions. So my relationship began with him when I really learned what intimacy is and how intimate God is with us through his touch and through the people that he brings into our lives. So once I started asking the real question to get to the meat of who I am and who he is and who I am in him, then the answers started coming. He would send a word about something that I prayed about, previous, through somebody that he knew that I respected or what have you, or I would just pick up something and it would just kind of speak to what it was that I was talking to him about. So it's not like he's in my head having these conversations with me, but, God moves in all types of ways to get your attention. So I just got still. I went within and I just started asking these questions, and that's how my relationship with him, got deeper. I've always had a connection with God, but the things that I learned about God, I had to unlearn and really take at face value what he was showing me in the moment, not what these people were telling me or not what I've been told.
Now, you see, one of the things you said a couple of things that are actually pretty important. I think the one of the things is that you had to be still. What do you mean by that?
You got to get rid of the noise. Sometimes you have to go into your solitude. Like I had to write this project. This project took 5 years. And when I moved to Atlanta, I started this book. And I started just meditating. I started staying home. I started staying away from the club scene. The only interaction that I really had with people was when I was doing, the poetry sets and just really experiencing, the brothers in the community here in Atlanta. And I set up a forum that I was doing every month to address certain issues that I talk about in the book to see, how we see ourselves. And then after those forums, I would go home and I would just write. And I would, just meditate in prayer what I learned or what I discovered, in those forums or about myself or about, the brothers that I was interacting with. When you're seeking that self-awareness, getting back to a place of self to find out, okay, I don't feel I'm wrong for being who I am. Why do they keep telling me that? When you go and explore that, you have to get away from people, you know what I'm saying, and be by yourself, literally, sometimes. Not all the time, but a lot of times when you're seeking those answers, you have to separate yourself from people and really go within and meditate. I don't know how to articulate the depth of that, but you got to separate yourself, meaning go home, get in your room and just do what you need to do for your own personal, sanity. You got to cut the noise out.
Okay.
You may have to stop hanging around certain people. That includes family. You may have to not call your mama. We've had those moments where me and my mom, we wouldn't talk for, months at a time. But I needed those moments because I had to get her, that negativity out of my head, get that voice out of my head, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In order to build myself. So you have to isolate sometimes.
That is true. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny part about it is the fact that everything that was stated about what gay is, what LGBT is, and all this other stuff, one thing that always seemed to rise its head to me is how hypocritical people are. I mean, some of the greatest, let me tell you something. I just had, and I invited this particular director on the show. I just saw the history of the blues. Okay, the history of the blues when it came down to women, because even back in those days, the church ruled everything. So if the church didn't give the A-OK, it was not approved. So blues were not approved. Blues were, but the thing about it is, what I later found out, that many of the women who were in the blues and traveling up and down were bisexual or gay. I had no idea the number of women, and I'm going to get this director on the show, and you better believe I'm going to do it. So, but I didn't believe that. And look at the reputation that blues has today. And the number of people, and the blues are definitely the backbone of many R&B, many rock, and is definitely the backbone of that. And a lot of people, again, LGBT was definitely in there. Fashion, when it comes to fashion, that's a whole nother category, because it's so many of the best looking clothes created by gay men. But yet, and still, I guess we're all going to hell. So what does that mean if you wear the clothes? What does that mean if you get the hair done by one? What does that mean? What does that mean? So it's something that a lot of contradiction and hypocritical. It just comes and rears its head consistently.
It is, and that's why these millennials are bucking the system in terms of saying we don't want to be labeled, because exactly what you just talked about. So,
exactly. So getting solitude, and by the way, I had to learn meditation a few years ago. It was just something that meditation. You're right, to be still and learning. And by the way, it's a learning process in that too, because we don't know how to shed just sitting your ass down. Excuse my French.
You don't.
we just don't understand to sit down, And matter of fact, we still got prayer wrong, but that's another topic too. Trust me, I didn't understand, and I guess I can share that now, because we are talking about God ain't called me fag, just in case you're just now joining the podcast. This is the author, Mr. John Collins. But even the process of prayer people, I guess my generation, well, correction, my whole upbringing was focused on just simply ask them and you shall receive. And
Mm-hmm.
the thing about it is that I've learned later on. And remember, you just cannot. I don't care what nobody tell me. I'm not easily convinced. You can't get everything from just one source. You got to go outside of that source to kind of get a better understanding, and it may help you come back to that source. But sometimes you got to go out. And what I've learned is the fact that you must already believe it is present and have it manifest. Yeah. And basically, your prayers are to say thank you. And I didn't learn that till years later too. So it's almost like framing your mind in a different way. So listen, I've learned a lot too. This is definitely a journey that many of the younger ones are still going on though. Despite their right. rebelness, despite them being a rebel and not wanting to hear anybody else, you still go through the emotional process. Which can be what? How was that emotional process for you? Was it a depression stage you ever hit? What exactly was it?
Man, when I left the church, Chris, I felt lost. But in that, I knew because God was preparing me to leave the church. Like a lot of the things that I saw mimicked what I saw in other churches. And I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail about that, but I do talk about that in the book, but I don't want to really get into that tonight. But a lot of the things that I saw in this particular church, I saw mimicked in other churches. Like God was telling me, he was preparing me to leave. I felt it coming. He was preparing me to leave. And then when the bomb dropped.
The bomb?
Yeah, it was I got some information concerning some things that had taken place with the young man that attended that church with the leadership. That information had landed in my lap, and it was things that I had heard about in rumor form, and I didn't really I didn't want to believe it.
Right. Right.
But when the information was put into my possession, I was like, oh my god. It's like, are you freaking serious? I had a meltdown. I really did. I felt like, here I was. I finally found a church home. This is what my daddy has been saying, and my grandma has been saying for years. You need to find a church home. You need to find a church home. You need to find a church home. I'm a church boy. I grew up in the church.
Right.
So when I got that information, I immediately withdrew myself from that church, and I felt like, okay, God, I know that you've been preparing me for this, but I didn't know that you were going to do it this way. Right. Dang, what do I do now? How do I get my word now? How do I get my quick fix for the week? You know what I'm saying? I'm for real. How am I going to know, if what I prayed for is being answered if I don't get a word next Sunday from you, from the minister? You know what I mean? Like, all these things were going through my head. What do I do now? So God was telling me, we are our own priests. They even preach that in church. We become our own priests if you build your relationship with God, if you seek him first. Once I got that understanding that he was still there and that he had taught me how to pray and he had showed me I knew his voice, I felt like, okay, I can live outside of the four walls of church,
right,
and still be, okay. Now I still, listen to certain messages like TDJ, things of that nature, get by. And I've gotten to a place now, that was 2 years ago. I've gotten to a place now where I can walk back into that church with no, malice towards the ministry. What I had to realize is they are men just like me. They're going to mess up just like me. And that's what it means to, when you put your faith in man, like, God, you kind of exalt the ministry over what God is doing through that ministry. And I think the Christian part of me, gravitated more towards that. Oh my God, look what this ministry is doing. I'm a part of this, and woo, 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 woo. And not really focusing on the totality that God was doing through that ministry for me.
Gotcha.
to do what it is that I was called to do, to bring the people that I'm connected to through this book and my writing to God. So
Gotcha.
it was this zigzag line that I had to kind of look at, why God did what he did to get to the point in my spiritual walk where I am now, where I'm over my church hurt. I'm over the fact that, whatever happened in that church happened. I had to look at these are men too. And they're on the, whatever God has for them to do is for them to do, no matter what situations they end up in. So I can't judge them because I've done some things just like they have, but so it was this, that's how I got over that.
Well, and there's always a scandal in the church. There's always some sort of scandal in the church that really gets people to either to do several things. Number one, to decide whether or not this is their home. And also number two is to re-question the whole aspect, to question just the whole, not re-question, just question the whole aspect of religion, what it is that we're talking about, who it is that we're really serving. It brings up a lot of questions when those scandals come about. And so with that, what do you want the reader to take away from reading your book?
Freedom again, that's my big word. And that's one of the main things. Freedom and love is one of the main things in this book. So I want people to get to a place of self-awareness where they don't feel like they have to be something or someone that they're not, or that, society says they have to be. I want people to get to a level where, especially Black gay men and Black lesbian women, I want us to get to a place where we free ourselves from what we've been taught we're not, in God's eyes.
Right.
That's what I want people to get from this book. I want you to find something in it to relate to and work. Maybe it'll help you work through whatever issue it is that you're going through. Because I address it all.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. And so, what other topics have you addressed in this?
You really want me to go there?
Go ahead. Go ahead. It's a podcast. We can say what we want.
I can say what I want.
Go ahead.
So I have, let's see. Entry 12 of the book is called The Submissive Cipher. Okay. And what the Submissive Cipher is, it's a series of poems that I put together. Some of it is written in free verse too, in that particular entry, where I talk about when me and my dad never had the birds and the bees conversation.
Okay.
Submissive Cipher is coming from the perspective of a bottom. I consider myself a bottom, so, or a submissive male in the sexual aspect of a relationship. So I talk about what is the importance of my dick. I have friends who are bottoms who don't use their dick, in terms of they don't want, they don't want it played with, they don't want you to give them a reach around, they don't want you to suck it. It's not there. Me, I'm not like that.
Okay.
Touch me, see me, play with it. That's, I'm not like that. So I have an attachment to my dick, even in the form of me being the submissive one in that sexual relationship.
Right.
There are tops that won't touch a dude's dick or won't suck dick, but then there are those that do, and he's looked at different. So I talk about one, me and my dad not having that conversation of, what is my dick for? Because I don't see it as me penetrating a woman to impregnate her. And then in the gay world, either brothers just don't, they think that I don't want them to, to touch it or play with it.
Right.
Or,
okay.
They do. So I talk about that. I talk about just what that's like. Okay.
So basically, I guess is it safe to say it's a memoir of you discovering? Well, this is a conversation that I never really had on the Brothaspeak Podcast, but that's okay. So, but it sounded like to me that this is a kind of a conversation that you were having with yourself in terms of what these body parts, because remember, we're always taught about our body parts being in more of a heterosexual context. So this is what you do to have children, babies, and that's why having a family is always considered to be the biggest accomplishment for a lot of those who are heterosexual. Now, what happens if you're not? And then we never really ask that question. We never really. So therefore, I guess you could say that was more of a discovery period, and maybe in the form of a poem, but more of a discovery period in terms of reshaping that thought process. And it sounded like to me that was also a part of you reshaping and rethinking and relearning everything, and that was a part of that process.
Yeah, because there were certain things that I used to say that I would never do. And I've heard other people say, I would never do that, blah, 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 blah. But give them 2 or 3 years or with the right person, and then all of a sudden that changes. So our sensuality evolves, you know what I mean? And we have to roll with that. But a lot of times we're not allowed to let that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. Listen, I completely understand where you coming from. Was your family highly religious?
Oh yeah. On my dad's side of the family, yes. On my mom's side, it's kind of hit or miss, but definitely my dad's side of the family. So growing up, yes, we attended my my dad's mom's church, home church, and we still go to that church to this day. When I visit Detroit.
Gotcha.
So
So okay, so now I can understand it even more, because I grew up in a very highly religious family, particularly on my mother's side. And my mother's was, I was the junior deacon, the drummer, the janitor, the usher when I needed to be. Every position in that church was pretty much with me and my grandfather, and especially my grandmother as well. So though he was a pastor, my grandmother was the mother of the church, And so growing up in a very highly religious, I'll be honest with you, for a minute there, I thought I wanted to be a minister. I really did think I was going to be a minister, and I was very much thinking about that in the 6th grade and 7th grade. Now, who thinks like that? But seriously, but I really believed that I was going to do that, and of course, things change, and my whole idea and my idea of religion in itself changed. A lot of things actually changed, but again, that was part of the growth and process. So those who
you have a ministry though.
Well, I didn't think about it like that. I didn't think about that, and I thank you very much. So I guess this is a part of that ministry, but the part that was always a grapple, because there's so many rules and restrictions of what you can and cannot do. To break that idea and that cycle takes years of chipping away. It takes years of chipping away. So I can definitely understand where this book is needed. It sounds like to me it's more of a memoir of your process and your relationship with God, and through every other aspect it tackles, such as family, relationships, and friendship and everything else. So I think this is a book that, to me, so far what it sounds like, it's a book that people need to read. Those who are definitely coming up in this community, as confusing as it can be, need to be reading this book. So I can honestly say thank you very much for coming on here, because I never had a book like that. I never had anyone who actually write a book. No, seriously, I never had anyone to actually write a book like that to explain from one's own experience the process of coming through, and to still hold God in their life throughout that entire process. And that is a very, very difficult one. But it all goes to show, no matter what question you give God or the universe, by the way, for those who are, very spiritual and not necessarily use titles, but it goes to show, no matter what question that you give and no matter what experience you may have, that entity, whether it's God, universe, whatever you want to call it, should be able to answer, because they are all. So thank you so much.
Know why he made me the way he was.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly. I mean, why? The question is why. So these experiences, this is definitely supposed to be, I believe, definitely has to be on the library books of many, or bookshelves of many of those who are within the community, especially those who are confused. So I appreciate you coming on the show, man. I really appreciate you.
No doubt. Thank you so much.
The God ain't calling me fat. So what are the new projects that you're going to be doing later in the future? There's going to be a play on it? Is going to be a one-man show? What's going on with this?
So I would like to see this as a one-man show one day. I'm going to try to work on that. Right now I'm working on the fourth installment to my series. It's called Letters. Well, that's the working title right now, but I think more than likely that's going to be what it's called. So that'll be coming out soon, probably within another maybe year or so. That's what I'm working on now. But yes, I do see this on the stage, maybe the big screen, but right now I visualize it as a one-man show.
Okay.
Who knows? So I'm putting it out there.
Put it on film. Don't be just keep it as a show. Put it on film so people can be able to see this. Because, listen, I mean, there is somebody, I think everyone in this process, everyone who's going in the process, I know for me, I got logos strictly because of Noah's Ark. And I did not I did not want my sister to know or nobody to know. So I specifically ordered that. So when you put it on film, it's easy access. I can pull it on my phone. You know, a play is nice. It's a nice intro to the film, you know, so, but everyone deserves the right to see that because everyone's going through it everywhere. Yeah. So this is so think about a film, a little documentary or one-man show, something like that.
I will work on that. Yeah.
Trust me, I have interviewed several directors. I have a list for you. Anyway, all right, so so I do thank you very much to be able to come back on the show and explain this. And like I said, where can they follow you? Where can these listeners or newfound readers follow you?
Yes, I'm on Instagram as John Collins Presents. You can find the books on Amazon and iTunes. They do come in paperback or ebook format. You can also email me or reach out to me on my social media sites, Facebook, John Collins. My email address is johncollinspresent@gmail.com. You can reach out to me that way. I also have books on hand that I can, send out to you. I take all forms of payment. So put it out there.
Put it out there.
Yeah.
All right. All right, John. All right, so like everyone normally knows, I put all the information on the podcast, so you'll be able to see exactly where his information is, what to click, and also the same goes for me. All the information is there online. You can follow me on Brothaspeak Pod on either Twitter or either Instagram, so everyone can be able to do that. And brotherspeakpod.net is the website. Now, I'm also going to be posting any type of clicks that goes directly to him. So if you want to purchase that book directly from Mr. John Collins, I'm sure he'll autograph it. I'm sure he will. So definitely let's send that over to him. I do thank you very much for being on the show. So this is Chris Brothaspeak Podcast signing off with Mr. John Collins and myself. Have a wonderful day.
All right.
All right.